Evening, everybody. Your old pal Steve Kosniewski here, coming at you a little bit late with the recap of the premiere. Okay, I'm now live. Okay, cool. See, they say not to do this millennial pause thing, but then you run across this shit where I have no idea if I was just broadcasting or not, but fuck it. Okay, good evening, everybody. It's your old pal Steve Kosniewski here, and I am coming at you about a week and a half late with a recap, but worth every minute of the wait, I'm sure, of the premier horror fiction event on the East Coast of the United States, which, of course, is Scares That Cares AuthorCon. This was the fifth Scares That Cares AuthorCon, which is kind of hard to believe. But you know what? They've done it kind of twice a year, a couple times, yeah, because I think they started doing them in 22. So it doesn't quite add up, but it's not an annual event. It's just kind of a as we, get around to an event, and then they name each one the, second, third, fourth, fifth AuthorCon. So this was the fifth AuthorCon. I have attended all of them. I have attended quite a number of the old flagship Scares That Cares events back before it was AuthorCon, when there was a lot more actors, directors, that kind of thing at the time. Um, they kind of converted over to a much more author-friendly, uh, concept, like I said, around 22, 23. So that was pretty great. And it has just, gone out of control. It's absolutely, the event of the year to attend if you are at all interested in horror fiction. So I am live on Facebook right now. If you are watching this, feel free to throw something in the comments section. I will be happy to respond to any questions, comments, whatever that you have. You may be catching this later on. I should be reposting it to my blog, YouTube, all that sort of thing. So my AuthorCon actually started about a week before any of the rest of you, or at least the beginnings of my celebration of it. So it would have started March 28th, Friday, March 28th for most of you, and then rolled into 29th, 30th. Now, I had the good fortune to have a signing at Vortex Books and Comics the week before, so that would have been the 23rd of March. And that was primarily because my good friend and one of the authors that I publish under my imprint French Press, Kit Power, flew in for the American debut of Millionaire's Day, which is the novella that we put out together. Primarily him, but I was his publisher. And the good thing about that was, of course, having your publisher overseas. I was able to invite Kit over, uh, take all the money, um, so that he doesn't have to like get any licenses to do business over in the States or any of that stuff. Like, I could take care of all that part and then pay him the royalties later. Of course, I paid him off 100% of, what he earned, but it was good to be able to just have an author be like, hey, just come over and just sign books. That's all you're going to do. I'll take care of all the money. I'll take care of all the business end. And let me tell you something. So this is something just for the, authors, business people, publishers, that sort of thing out there that I never learned until my first time going overseas, which I talked about a little bit, probably in a similar video like this. I went over to British Fantasy Con in October of last year. And let me tell you, it is a nightmare to try and go overseas and take cash. You have to do the whole trading out for the foreign currency thing if you want to take cash. Square just does not work. I don't know if it's better in places like Germany or I don't know. This is purely based on the UK, the UK and the US. But I didn't learn until I went over there that you can't take a card. You can't take a UK card via Square. I think I was able to take a couple of Irish credit cards. I'm not sure what the difference was there, or maybe it was just that the people who had come from Ireland already knew they had to have a credit card that would work, quote unquote, overseas. So maybe that was just how that panned out. But let me tell you, having gone through it, there's nothing worse than going overseas, trying to figure out how to do business. And everyone that I asked about it, and I did my research. I always try to do my research on this kind of stuff. I talked to Gemma Moore, I talked to Tim Levin, I talked to a couple people that I know have been over in the States for signings, and I was like, how do you do it? What's the deal? And they're all like, just cash, cash only. Like, okay, cash only is cool, but I feel like that really limits your sales. And especially, again, the UK, as I learned on my last couple of trips there, very credit card based culture. Like they're just kind of phasing out cash altogether. U.S., you can get along a little better. You could probably demand cash from everybody at a U.S. Convention and probably get away with it, as per, my other friends and colleagues' experience. But uh, as I say, you're gonna run into issues where folks are like, "Oh, I don't have that much cash. All right, cool. You almost had a sale, but good to see you." And you don't want that. Anyway, that's all a long roundabout way of saying it really worked out for Kit to come over and do his first overseas signing, so I could just take care of the sales and everything. And of course, we started out the week with a trip to Vortex Books and Comics down in Columbia, Pennsylvania, not very far from where I live. So that was very convenient, and of course, we're very grateful to the owners and everything for hosting us, before the convention. And again, they were able to take care of the business end of it, so again, Kit could just sign, and all was very, very cool. So he flew in on Saturday night. If it seems like I keep checking my calendars because I do. So yeah, he came in on March 22nd into Baltimore BWI airport. So we were very worried with all of the turmoil in the world, I guess we'll say, to be as vague as possible. We were pretty worried about whether he was going to, get there, come through, go through customs, blah blah blah, and of course the whole argument about, hey, are you coming to the States to do business? No, of course not. I'm just signing some books. So we were very very panicky. And I think I was supposed to pick him up at the air. I think his plane arrived at like 4, and I'm like, okay, I know 4 really means he's gonna, by the time he gets off, gets his luggage off the carousel and everything, maybe 4:15, 4:30. It's an international flight, so you go through customs. Maybe it's a little longer. Um, by about 4:45, I was like, oh, he's been detained. They're doing full cavity searches on him, everything like that. But no, right around 4:45, my phone goes off. Hey, I'm good. I'm through. Come pick me up at gate such and such. So I go to pick up Kit, and I'm like, hey, how was it? Were we, right to be worried? He's like, that was actually the best time I've ever had coming through customs. It was like no issue. Okay, cool. I guess it's better to be, worried about nothing than not worried about something that does come along. So yeah, I know you're all going to be wondering about this because everybody that I introduced him to for the next week was like, well, where have you taken him? What parts of the states have you shown him? By which primarily we apparently mean fast food. So they do not apparently have Taco Bell in the UK. So the first place we went on Saturday, I was like, "Do you need to go right to bed? What do you need?" He said, "No, let's go get some food." So we went and got him his first Taco Bell. So I'm very proud of that. It's an excellent way to, introduce you to some authentic Southwestern culture here in the States. So we got some Taco Bell Saturday night. Sunday morning is the signing. So we drove down to Columbia, PA, and the signing was for about 2 hours. I think it was 1 to 3, and we actually pretty much just did a Q&A the entire time. Like we never stopped the Q&A to go and like quote unquote sit at tables, which was cool. So the folks were very welcoming. We actually had a young lady, and some of you may have seen. Oh, I guess I'll try and hold this up to the. If you can't see what that is, because I'm holding it incorrectly. Uh, It is a friendship bracelet that says Stephen, and I believe Kit also got one, and our third uh, bookseller that day, John Kazga, also got one. So this very young lady, I want to say she was 9, 10, 11. I'm very sorry if you're a little bit older than that. Came and she wanted us to be on her YouTube channel, asked us a couple questions, and they weren't like, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" They were, very like insightful, like, "Hey, where do you get, you know, uh, where do you get your ideas from? How do you write horror? What really scares you?" Um, good questions. So I don't think it was for a school assignment or anything. I think it was just like for this channel that she's doing. So that is up over on YouTube. Very cool little interview, and of course she made us these friendship bracelets, uh, which was très cool. And of course everybody else that came out there. I know John Urbansick was there. Wes Southard was there, and I think his son. I don't think his whole family, but his son was there with him. We could tell they'd just come from a hockey game because, of course, they were all in their hockey jerseys. So that was very cool signing. Had a bunch of sales, so really kicked off the trip the right way. Um, Now Scares. So as I said, that was the Sunday before Scares. Um, and of course, Vortex is kind of like a destination bookstore now. I actually heard this week. I think Dark Delicacies over on the West Coast actually shut down. So Vortex might be one of the last, men standing, quote unquote, for the as far as destination bookstores go. So of course, it's really cool to get to sign there. Um, and yeah, I mean that was just a great event. But then we basically had until Friday before Scares of Cares began. Now Thursday, people are in and it's fun. And there's actually a little bit of programming on Thursday night, like, hey, welcome, let's raise a little bit of money for the charity. The first night that folks are kind of here, but things don't really kick off until Friday. That being said, I have gone down on Wednesday before, and it's primarily just the organizers, which at this point, like I said, I've been to, I don't know, 10, 15 of these events. I know most of the organizers, I'm pretty well liked down there. I mean, as far as I know, maybe I'm just pretty well tolerated down there. So I was like, okay, I think we'll be good. We can probably depart on Wednesday and, get down there around 4, whatever check-in time is. And then, amuse ourselves or hang out with some, early organizers on Wednesday night. Thursday, people will be starting to trickle in and we'll have more stuff to do, and then we'll be ready for the con. So we still had Monday and Tuesday. Um, Monday, I had nothing planned. I was just like, okay, this is the day to do whatever. So I think all we really did on Monday, Kit wanted a cheesesteak, which I guess he has never had. So Central Pennsylvania is not the greatest place in the world, obviously, for cheesesteaks, that being Philadelphia or the suburbs of Philly. But it's not a terrible place. There are a few diamonds in the rough over here. I know Wesley Southard is a big fan of, oh God, what's it called? Fatty Patty or something? I'm sure he'll correct me after he sees this video. There's a place in New York that Wesley Southard really likes. I'm a big fan of a place in Mechanicsburg called Philly Steak and Hoagie. It's about the closest to a real cheesesteak that I've found out here. There's maybe 2 or 3 decent places. There's this whole thing. I don't know if I should get into this, but whatever. Fuck it. It's my live stream. There's this weird thing about Central Pennsylvania where people don't want to get rolls, like the pizza shops and the hoagie shops where you would normally get a decent cheesesteak. Like, oh yeah, what we'll do is we'll use pizza dough, and we'll just take pizza dough and put it into a lump, and then that'll be our cheesesteak rolls. And I'm like, who the fuck wants to eat that? Who wants to eat a big, bready cheesesteak? I don't know. I don't know where they came up with this idea, except that I guess it's a big cost saver. And the first time that I lived out here, and I had one of those, I was like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Like, it's 2 hours away. It's not that fucking far to Philly. Like, why can you guys not get this right? But there are obviously a few transplants here who have, managed to bring rolls, I know, shocking, from 2 hours away to make a decent cheesesteak. So we got that with Kit. I don't think we really did all that much. Maybe just, recovered from jet lag and that kind of thing. Um, Showed him around a little bit, some of the areas around here, but we didn't do the whole like, hey, let's see the Capitol, let's see Hershey Park, blah blah blah. I mean, that's a whole other thing. Um, then Tuesday he actually had a walking tour, which was the Brian Keene walking tour. I don't know how Brian did it, being as he's one of the organizers of Scares That Care, but he had a walking tour the day before he had to go down to Virginia, and generously, offered to invite, Kit on that. Kit being one of the biggest Brian Keene fans in the world. That's probably, I suspect, the reason why I was able to convince him to fly out for this event. So they talked about Bruce Springsteen or whatever they talked about, and I was able to go to work for a couple hours and get a little bit of work done before basically, peacing out for a solid week. Um, then on Wednesday, we made the drive down to Williamsburg. It's a fucking nightmare. Uh, I don't normally, I mean, maybe I do. I could go back and watch all my videos from the past, but I recall it taking as short as 4 hours from central Pennsylvania. Um, I've also recalled it taking as long as 6 hours. This was definitely a 6 hour drive. And I think it's because going through Washington, as you generally have to, like, there's ways around, but you have to, like, drive through West Virginia. It's a whole fucking thing. But if you take the most direct route from central Pennsylvania to Williamsburg, Virginia, um, you go through Washington, D.C. And so usually, I've always in the past, like, just timed it. And I'm sure if you left at 3 a.m., like, you're fine. But this year, of course, all federal employees have to be back at work, physically back at work. So, of course, it was a nightmare getting through DC, and so it was like a solid 6 hour drive. So I think we left a little bit after noon and got there around 6:30 or something like that. Um, Wednesday night, like I said, kind of low key. We met up with some of the organizers, had a good time, that sort of thing. Now before, oh, I probably should have done this right up front. I always do this before I do a video. Listen, I love you all, especially if you were there. I could have had the loveliest conversation in the world with you. I could have chatted with you for 2 hours and we could have really bonded, and you may still not get mentioned in this video, okay? It is not because I dislike you. It is not because I'm snubbing you. It is because A, I don't like name dropping. B, if all I did was name drop all the people I had conversations with over the weekend, this video would just be an unwatchable, it probably already is unwatchable, but it would just be an unwatchable mess of me mentioning people that I talked to in conversation. So please forgive me. I still love you, even if I don't mention you in this conversation. And I am probably just trying to avoid coming off like a fucking climber, name dropper kind of person. So that's out of the way. And now I realize I've already mentioned a couple of names, so it's whatever. Oh, and the other thing is, I will not mention your name if you are not a public figure. So if you are so and so's wife or partner or whatever, like you will be so and so's wife or partner. If you're not like actively, hey, I was a dealer there. Like I'm happy to mention somebody's name, like John Durgan or somebody. Uh, but if you're just there and you're like a private figure or private citizen who happened to attend, I won't mention your name. So those are my two ground rules that I usually have for these videos. Anyway, um, so yeah, Wednesday night, I think we just spent a little bit of time in the bar, hung out with some people. It's probably boring to anybody that wasn't there having fun. So then Thursday morning, Wiley Young, my good friend and collaborator, finally got to town. Now, Wiley Young and I had been tasked for the first time. Well, it was the first time ever for us, but it's the first time in a long time that Brian Keene did not personally host the Gross Out contest for AuthorCon. Now, there's a whole thing where we get into the whole history of the Gross Out contest, which I'm not going to right now. But if you guys want that in a future video, I guess we could do that. Let me know. Oh, by the way, if you are watching, the comments are on if you want to chime in and have anything to say or have any questions like that. So, in any case, we were tasked to take over the AuthorCon Gross Out contest this year. So, without getting into the whole history of things, there are now two Gross Out contests that occur every year, which is the one that is hosted by Jeff Burke at KillerCon in Austin, Texas, and that's usually in August, late July timeframe. And then the one that is at Scares the Care AuthorCon, which is usually March, April timeframe. So there are now two contests, and Wiley and I are now hosting the AuthorCon one. I mean, unless popular demand is that we step down or something. So that I guess that's going to be the foreseeable future. So Wiley and I did a ton of prep work for the Gross Out contest this year. We had meetings, we did videos. If you've been, following any of my social media, you've probably seen a couple of my videos about I wanted to do the pre-registration. I wanted to do everything. I'm like, I want to limit all of the admin crap that nobody enjoys. I don't want anybody sitting out in the audience while we're like taking down names and figuring out stuff. I'm like, let's do that all up front and get to the grossness. I'm like, get as many people on stage as we humanly possibly can and get not leave our judges sweating and dying like pigs in the heat, which is what also always happens. Um, so we had done a ton of prep work for the Gross Out contest up to that point, but we had not met in person. And there were a couple of innovations that we had going on. So this year, Wiley had purchased an actual gong. So if you don't know how the Gross Out contest works, you can be gonged off, like in the Gong Show, which we used to just use metaphorically, but now you can be literally gonged off. So he was super excited to show Kit and I the gong, and I think his intent is for the winners to start signing it, although we did not do that this year, so we'll have to catch up with that next year or whenever the next time we Jackie Chin. OMG, where have you been hiding? Hey, Jackie, good to see you. I've been here the whole time. Uh, I don't think, yeah, I think the last time we had a interview with each other was probably about 10 years ago. So, yeah, Thursday. So, Thursday at the con, we spent most of the day with Wiley Young. Uh, I hope he was happy to just hang out with us. So we had to talk about the gong. We had to talk about a bunch of the gross out, ins and outs, the admin stuff to limit the wasted time and all that sort of thing. So Thursday night, I also mentioned there is a little bit of programming in the evening. And the big programming this year was the Spirited Giving. So Spirited Giving, and I apologize if any Spirited Giving folks are out there, please, correct me, let me know what the whole deal is. The way I understand it is Spirited Giving is a separate organization from Scares That Care. So but they're sort of with a similar mindset. So they raise money for charity by using horror and readings and small stage plays and that sort of thing. Um, so you normally use that to raise money for charity. So they're not directly connected to Scares That Care. But this year, the organizers of the Scares That Care convention invited the Spirited Giving folks to come on Thursday night and do a presentation with the Scares being the charity benefiting from their show. So the fun thing was, like, the centerpiece of the show, or I guess the grand finale, I should say, was a live production of the Midnight Pals, which a lot of you will know from Bitter Corella's. I guess he's on Blue Sky now. It used to be on that. Uh, social media platform, which we do not name, but now it's primarily on Blue Sky. And so what he does is a couple of famous horror icons, uh, not necessarily contemporaneously, which is the cool part. So you might have like Edgar Allan Poe, Stephen King, and like Mary Shelley or something, who like never would have met in real life, are all hanging around a campfire telling each other scary tales, a la Are You Afraid of the Dark, the 90s Nickelodeon show. And so gradually, Bitter introduces all these other, sometimes older, sometimes newer authors and creatives into the Midnight Pals. Um, and this has been an ongoing thing on his Blue Sky account. So this year, they said for the grand finale of Spirited Giving, will you do a live presentation of the Midnight Pals with the authors who are physically present at Scares, including myself, including Wiley Young, also including Laurel Hightower, Brian Keene, and Todd Kiesling, or should I say Kiesling? So I kind of spoiled the joke on that, but I will get to that in a second. So round five. So that was to kick off at 7. So around 5:30, uh, those of us that I just mentioned were invited down to do a table read. So we had all received the script a few weeks ahead of time, but of course that's very different from, you know, presenting it with one another. So we did the table read. Poor Wiley is starving. He hasn't eaten all day. Me and Kit are talking his ear off all day about the gross out contest and this and that. He hasn't gotten a chance to eat. Now we go and do the table read, and it's like 5:30, 6:30. It's about time to start, and we're not quite sure how long Spirited Giving goes, so we're not sure. He's like, "Can I slip away and get food?" No, not quite. I don't know. Um, so that just rolled right into the commencement of Spirited Giving. So they had about 4 um, readings prior to the live Midnight Pals presentation. So I won't go through all of them. Some of them were quite good. DM Gway, who I know is a big fan of Brain Jones, and it was great to get to see her. I think that's the first time we've met. Um, there was one where the author was a ghost and just had the worst like Charlie Brown like 2 holes cut out of a sheet ghost costume that she was wearing, and then the whole story was about a ghost that was haunting a high rise, but was just very, very peevish with the human, and was like, "Listen, I'm supposed to be haunting you, but you're making my life miserable." So that was pretty funny. And then Jamie Flanagan, who wrote Midnight Mass and all that kind of thing, he did an excellent reading that was like. Now he said I haven't done this, of course, but he said that it was epistolary, so it was letters from Dracula to his brides and from the brides to Dracula, and he said you could take those and insert them by date throughout the original manuscript of Dracula, and it would still make sense. And that went from being like everyone was pissing their pants laughing to like heartbreaking by the end. And then Brian Keene did a reading, which I've heard before, but it was well worth it. It was well, it was about an event that went rather sideways, which I enjoy, but maybe this is one of those what happens at Spirit of Giving stays at Spirit of Giving kinds of situations. And then we get into the stage play. So Bitter Corella's there. Now I've met Bitter Corella once or twice before. I think I met him at Scarce the Cares AuthorCon St. Louis, where he was just delightful, delightfully devilish. I'm sorry, as he would say. Uh, and I seem to recall making an ass of myself there, which is not an uncommon thing at conventions. I do seem to make an ass of myself quite often. Um, but he was so he was the narrator, and then the other 5 of us. Brian, Todd, myself, Laurel, and Wiley. Yeah. So then the other five of us each had, speaking roles. And, I won't go over the whole thing, but it was just like these very broad oversimplifications of our works and our milieus. And I was just really impressed with mine, of course. It was this bold, anti-capitalist, just a speech that I had to give, and I was like, "Oh my God!" He really dug into my work and got that out of it. And I was like, "Oh, very cool, very cool." So you were able to read the subtext. I'm very impressed. Um, and yeah, Wiley was like the Lenny to Brian's George from Of Mice of Men. That was pretty amusing. And then here was the like I just think the absolute killer part. So I got to step out on stage, and Bitter's like, "Everybody, please welcome." And I'm like, "He's gonna say it wrong." Stephen Kozanowski just fucking nailed it. I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." I walk out. I'm like, "Yeah, thanks everybody." And then he's like, "And our final panelist, Todd Kiesling." And Kiesling looks at him. He's like, "Actually, it's Kiesling." And it's like, how do you screw up the hardest? How do you get the hardest name in the world right and screw up one of the easiest names in the world? But it was just like perfect. Like we couldn't have scripted it better, you know. So Spirit of Giving was great, and I can just imagine at this point Wiley just like gnawing through a table leg or something. Poor guy hasn't eaten all day. It's almost 9 p.m. And a pizza delivery guy shows up at the back of the auditorium and is looking around in confusion. And he leaps off the stage and goes diving for the back of the auditorium. It's like, no, 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 don't give it to anyone. Don't leave it anywhere. That pizza's for me. Um, and then, of course, Wiley's, he's a great big puppy dog. He's everybody's best friend at every convention that he goes to. And I'm just watching him, and he is like holding this pizza in his hand and like chatting and doing the polite thing with everybody. But I'm just like watching him, like he's shaking, like, oh my God, when am I going to eat this pizza? I just look at him, I'm like, Wiley, take a break, get out a slice of pizza. He's like, no, no, but we have to sign the scripts for Bitter. And I'm like, take a slice of pizza, bring it with you while we sign the scripts for Bitter. And he finally got to eat. Um, and then that transitioned into something kind of like the old days. So the authors used to, there used to be this one room at the hotel in Williamsburg where the authors all spoke in. And again, this is going back to the days when there were authors, directors, actors, everybody there. The authors were kind of limited to this one room. Now, of course, we're everywhere because it's AuthorCon. Um, so we used to always end up in that room, and that was kind of like the place where the authors hung out. Um, so this year, it was kind of like those old, and gradually we had been moving out to the bar, moving out to the lobby, that kind of thing, like your normal, or moving to rooms, pardon me, that kind of thing. Um, this year, we finished up the Spirited Giving in the auditorium. Excuse me. Yes, I'm still drinking coffee at 20 of 11 at night. That's me. Um, and then we all hung out in the auditorium, and all the authors started drifting in. Adam Caesar, and again, I know I said earlier about not, dropping a bunch of names. Uh, but yeah, a bunch of people started drifting in, and that was just where we ended up hanging out. And like talking about old times and, missing friends and that sort of thing. So that was a very cool evening. So we transition into Friday, and Kit actually he does have some U.S. fans. So like I said, was his first signing in the U.S., but he does have a bunch of U.S. fans, and I'm trying to kind of, with this business partnership, uh, drum up more of a U.S. fan base for him. But it's not to say that he doesn't. So he had plans for the afternoon with a couple of his fans, go out and have lunch, that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, perfect. We already got you a cheesesteak earlier in the week, so and Wesley Southard's coming into town, as well as one of our fans who, again, I mentioned earlier. I mean, I would mention your name buddy, because you always make my con, but you're not a public figure, so let me know if you want me to mention your name. Otherwise, I won't. So Wesley Southern came into town with his whole family, uh, which we have to revisit that as well. So he brought his wife and his son this time, and remember I said I had just seen him with his son on Sunday, but not his wife. Um, all right, so we'll just go into this right now. Wesley Southern's wife had a big old black eye. Now I'll just tell you up front. First of all, Wes is one of just the kindest, gentlest souls that you could ever meet. Um, and baby had hit her with, I mean, he's 3 or a toddler, whatever. But the very young child had Hitler with his Hitler had hit her, not deliberately, with his sippy cup, and it had given her a big old black eye. And babies don't know any better. They're not trying to hurt you. They just want more juice or whatever. But of course, it had to happen to Wes Southern. So the whole weekend, everyone was like, "Hey Wes, why are you beating your wife?" And she was just going along with it. And everyone would be like, "Hey, so and so, let's start her name there. Uh, do you need something? Can blink twice if you need us to rescue you from Wes?" And she's like, "He told me, I just wouldn't listen." And she was just playing it, just beautifully. Like Wes doesn't deserve that kind of thing, but in another better way, he really does deserve that kind of thing. He's just such a sweetheart. But life just throws these sorts of things at him. Uh, so anyway, Wiley, Wes, his family, and a good friend and fan, we all go down to Rick's Cheesesteaks, which is also, of course, a staple of Scares the Care. Down in Williamsburg, Virginia. We always try to give them a lot of business, and we always see a lot of the Rick's Cheesesteak people come to the event then, which is also always very cool. So it's a very reciprocal thing, and of course, what's the worst thing that happens? A charity gets some money, right? Like even if you didn't enjoy horror or whatever, a charity gets some money. So we kind of go our separate ways. And I realized that I had in my head this reading that I was going to do, but I had never written it down. And I always have a couple of like in a pinch. If you like right now were like, Steven, I need you to do a reading, I could pull something up on my phone and I could give you a pretty good reading. But I don't like to repeat myself. I think it's important to stay fresh. So, like, if I've written a reading for 2025, I might read it at a couple of different events in 2025, but I won't normally uh, repeat it to the same audience. So, in a pinch, I could have pulled something out, but what I really want to do, and especially for something like Scares That Cares, is write something fresh. So, about 2 o'clock or whenever we get back from lunch, I'm like, huh, Kit's busy. I don't have to worry about, he's entertained, in a foreign country, he's taken care of. Like, I sort of hope that his fans weren't actually bone collectors, but assuming that's not the case, I should probably go and write this reading and maybe work on a little bit more of that gross out contest admin. So I'll go back to my room, and I'm tired. I'd been driving for a couple of days. I'm like, I'll just bang out this reading, and then maybe I'll get an hour or two of sleep before the 4 o'clock. And it's already 2 uh, opening ceremonies. So I go, and of course, being the perfectionist that I am, of course, it didn't just all spill out of my mind. Although I had been writing it in my mind for months, if weeks, if not months. So I pounded it out, and it really came out like beautifully. But it needed that second or third draft before. Like my first draft was just like everything that I thought about the subject, and then when I paired it back, I was like, oh, this is going to be a beautiful reading. So of course, at that point, um, it's 3:30, 3:45. Kit comes back. You all be happy to know he was not in fact bone collected by his fans, and we all head right over to opening ceremonies. because getting sleep this weekend was not meant to be for me. So we go to the opening ceremonies, and every year they do the what's called the Wilburn Thomas Award, which is in honor. So they do a Crystal Award, which is for one of the Scares That Cares. Uh, I don't want to say employees. One of the volunteers. There you go. One of the actual charitable volunteers. So they handed out the Crystal Award. Very very well deserving, but again, not a public figure. So uh, you know, if you were there, you know who it was, and blah blah blah. Then they hand out the Wilburn Thomas Award, which is named after Jay Wilburn and Dave Thomas, who are two friends of mine who unfortunately passed away in the last few years. And this award is more for like service to the authorial community. And it's gone to some very deserving people in the past, but I was very happy to see it go to Maurice Broadus this year, who is actually, he's done a lot for my career. I know he's done a lot for a lot of people's careers. And I think he was surprised, and I don't think he had any idea that was coming. So that was great to see. And then they cut all of the attendees loose from opening ceremonies so that they could give the vendors the Wi-Fi password and that sort of thing. And then we go right into the vendor's room for sales for the evening at 5. So we go into the vendor's room, start selling, blah, blah, blah. And I've got a 5:30 panel. So I've got my first panel of the night within like half an hour of kicking off. So I'm like, okay, Kit, I wish you many sales in the next hour. If you have any that are not cash, Wiley Young will take care of you. And I squared all that with Wiley, and of course he was fine. So we're sitting next to Wiley on the one side and Wes Southard the next table down, and then on the other side was Amanda Headley, who was actually in one of my Scares That Care debuts, as it turns out, Strange New Moons, the werewolf anthology, featuring just a bunch of great people, and a number of them were at Scares. So that was very cool. Um, and it was very cool to be sitting next to Amanda, who I don't think I've made any secret of this fact, but I think she wrote the best story in the book. She really got the message. So the idea behind the book is werewolf stories that are different, that are somehow turned on their head. It's not the same old, The Howling, American Werewolf in London, whatever. It has to be different. And we got some stuff that was a little bit sideways, a little bit this and that. Amanda really got the message and gave us something very, very, very different. And I think for taking that wide swing, gave us the best story of the book. So at 5:30 on Friday evening, I was the moderator for the Blending Genres panel, with Derek Cavagnano, Jennifer didn't show up, Rowan Hill, and Andrew Nyberg. So that panel actually went very well. Um, it was a little bit slower paced because, like I said, Jennifer didn't actually show up. So I probably, I've moderated hundreds of panels over the years at this point. I probably should have known better. I probably should have thrown myself in a little bit more. What I usually like to do is, if I'm moderating, I like to step back and just keep the panelists talking. But when I'm at a lower number of panelists, I really should throw myself in more to fill up the time and that sort of thing. And I kind of ran it a little bit wrong. So my apologies to anybody that attended the panel. But even so, I kind of kept writing down questions and coming up with things and keeping the ball rolling. I just realized about halfway through, I was like, I should really have started from the beginning, interjecting myself more. But hey, it's live performances. You learn everything as you go. You're never going to be perfect. But even so, I think it was a very, very good panel. So it's back to the vendor's room, back to sales. Sales are crazy. I actually think Friday night might have been the best sales of the con on average, like pound for pound. So this happens at every convention. It's always a question of, is everybody going to come out on Friday night and hit the ground rolling? Is Friday night going to be slow and then Saturday's when everybody really comes? Or is there going to be some weird thing where Sunday everybody has FOMO and they come out and buy? And it's always just kind of random. So this year I think it was more of a Friday night kind of event. Um, so then that night we didn't really have anything planned for dinner. And this is where I mentioned earlier, as I found out, a lot of what people were most interested in was what fast food places have you taken Kit to since arriving in the country? And I'm like, don't worry, don't tell his wife, but I've taken him to plenty of fast food places already. Um, but they're, oh my God, I swear to God, like as soon as they hear the accent, people are like, oh, have you had Popeyes? Have you had, I don't know, Churches? Have you had this? Do you have McDonald's over there? I'm like, yeah, guys, okay. So, we, that evening, we went to the bar, and a lot of folks were hanging out there, so it was kind of the first real evening of the con. And we caught up with good friend Robert Swartwood, who was one of the uh, guests of honor. Oh, pardon me. That was probably really unpleasant for all of you to hear. Part of the reason this is coming off on the Wednesday after the event is that I've not been feeling very well lately. So I hope you'll forgive me. But maybe it's nice to revisit something that you've all kind of thought about and then spent the last week missing, and then like, oh hey, something else popped up that can remind me of that. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping to go for the 8 day later nostalgia vote here. But the truth is just that I've been feeling really sick and still trying to go to work every day. So anyway, we met up with Rob Swartwood at the bar, and we're having all these conversations with people. And finally, we're trying to tell Kit, well, Wendy's does indeed have square burgers. And he's like, that's not a thing. And we're like, I mean, it does. And Swartwood's like, yeah, and you take the fries and you dip them in the Frosty. And he's like, what's a Frosty? And then we're trying to explain what a Frosty is. And I'm like, it's chemicals. It's just chemicals. You can't even say that it's like ice cream. Like it's probably just malt. I don't know that there's anything like organic in it. Um, so after all that discussion and everybody weighing in on whether we were going to go to Popeyes or what next, we decided to take him over to Wendy's. And I think he was relatively satisfied with that. And it did indeed have square burgers for our viewers abroad. Wendy's does indeed have square burgers, so that it's because they don't cut corners, I think is the thing, and it stretches out. So like there's four little extra bites outside of the roll, or the bun rather. Hey, Bill Fisher. So Bill says, what is the most beneficial way for the writers and editors for fans to purchase French press books? Well, Bill, the best way would be from a convention like Scares the Care. Um, I have actually covered this in a little bit of detail on my TikTok. Um, so when I purchase a paperback, so let's take for instance one of these lovely books which I've already showed you, A Millionaire's Day of Strange New Moons. Um, when I purchase these for sale at a convention, I purchase them with my author's discount. So let's say you could buy one of these directly for I think 15 and 12 or something like that. I will get them for $4, so I get them with the full author's discount. Basically, I get them for cost. I mean, not really, because it's Amazon, so they're screwing you somehow or another. But I get them for what Amazon calls cost. So I would essentially pocket $11 on that purchase. Whereas if you purchased it for $15 from Amazon, there'd be the $4 of cost. Well, there's also shipping, but for simplicity's sake, there's the $4 of cost, and then I have to split the purchases, either 70/30. Yeah, I think it's 70/30 if you charge the right amount. Or maybe it's 50/50 for paperback. Yeah, no, that's getting into ebooks. 50/50. So of that $11, I would get 650. Um, that being said, if I'm not at an event near you, I'm very happy for you to purchase it on Amazon, secondary market, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess the second most beneficial way would be through, uh, you know, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or another printer. And then the least beneficial to me would be on the secondary market, because on the secondary market, what it is okay. So Jim Bob paid $15 for Strange New Moons, and then he wants to get a little bit. He read the book, and he wants to get a little bit of money back. I already got my 650 or whatever. Now he sells it on eBay. You buy it for $10. Of that, I get nothing. Jim Bob gets something, and eBay gets something, right? So the least beneficial way would be on the secondary market. But the truth is, I appreciate all sales. I don't really care that much. I don't make any money on this. It's a very expensive hobby. I'm just happy to get the work out there. I'm just happy to get my author, as a publisher, I'm happy to get my author's work out there. As an author, I'm just happy to get my work out there. So if you're reading it, I appreciate it. Um, we could get into piracy. I'm not super opposed to piracy, honestly. I know that's like, you're not supposed to say that, but I'm like, look, if the difference is between you pirating my book and reading it and then becoming a fan and maybe buying some of my books in the future, and you just never reading any of my books, I'm like, obviously it's better for you to pirate it. There are people that are like, if you pirate my book, you are literally stealing the food out of my kids' mouths. I'm like, it's not quite that extreme. I mean, it's, of course, some folks will pillory me for saying any of this anyway. Okay, Bill's response. Thanks. Being a Midwest guy and no more Midwest scares events on the horizon, sadly. I'll have to grab one from Amazon. Yeah, no, that's fine. I don't know why you say that. I think that there is nothing else this year, but I think St. Louis was very beneficial, so I think they are looking at St. Louis again. So yeah, nothing else this year, but yeah. Okay, and then Bill says the artist needs to get paid. That's not negotiable. So I'll def buy anything I can. All right, thanks, man. So, da, 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 da. Right. So Friday night, yes, we take Kid out to first Wendy's. So, truly, I have brought culture to this fine gentleman from overseas. Got on the Taco Bell, got on the Wendy's, got on the cheesesteak. I mean, what else does our great country have to offer? Um, so the other thing that was really cool on Friday night, uh, some of you will have seen some photos of me with my albino Splatterpunk award, and I finally got my painted Splatterpunk award. And you see there it says 2024 Splatterpunk Awards Best Short Story, shared with Chet Williamson, of course. So for those of you who have not seen this, this is a Bernie, and it is a platform of some sort with a severed green, possibly zombie head with some mushrooms and stuff growing on it, and some rocks and effluvia, and then a big old axe in the center of the head. So my understanding is this is the really difficult part about transporting Splatterpunk awards, is potentially losing the axe in the middle of the head. So Wrath James White actually came out, and apparently this was opened at, I guess it's not customs, I guess just at security at the airport. He had it all wrapped, and they were like, sir, you're going to need to open this. And he's like, come on, man, it's an award, and I don't want it to fall apart. Well, it would be pretty funny if this fell apart in my hands like this, right? Well, I'm fiddling with it to show you. That's the part that might fall apart. So apparently they hassled him a little bit at the airport about this, but he did get it through. And, so I'm really happy to finally receive my Splatterpunk award, which of course means that I somehow now, because I made a promise on TikTok that I would give the Splatterpunk speech on TikTok, which is now going on 8 months ago. So you're gonna get something, some kind of recreation of what I hope my Splatterpunk speech was. I'll see what I can remember it. I don't think I wrote anything down, which is not like me, but we'll see how far that goes. Um, and then, of course, the other big thing. So I mentioned two of my Scares the Cares debuts. So Millionaire's Day was, of course, the reason why Kit came to the States for his first American signing. Strange New Moons was supposed to debut at Dark Drafts earlier this year in it's not Columbia, it's Lancaster somewhere, Lancaster, PA. I did not get any Strange New Moons prior to that event. So I apologize to everyone that I promised that this was going to be debuting at Dark Drafts. Didn't happen, obviously. So Scares the Cares turned out to be the Strange New Moons debut. But in spite of that, the actual debut that was supposed to occur at Scares the Care was Looney, my collaboration with the late, great Gavin Dillinger. He's still alive. I just said late, great because he's a fucking asshole. Looney is, well, actually, maybe the TV makes it a little more obvious. We do have the cartoon character on the front here. Um, it's essentially a story of a woman who is in a bad place in her life, and she kind of reverts to watching some of her grandfather's old uh, cartoon shows on a VHS type one night when she's contemplating suicide, and then the cartoon characters crawl out of the TV, and she enters into a night of profound uh, psychological horror and existential terror. So I was very proud to have three debuts at Scares That Care. One for my publishing house, one for myself, one as an editor. Um, Now, of course, Gavin, being the fucking douchebag that he is, decided he was going to undercut me. So he asked me ahead of the event what I was going to be selling copies of Looney for. I said $15, so then, of course, he made a big show of selling his for only $14.99. So, I hope you feel good about yourself, Gavin. I hope you really, really enjoy, this kind of cutthroat attitude where friendship means nothing and artistic work has no value except what Gavin Dillinger assigns to it or whatever. So yeah, all weekend I had to be approached by people who were like, "Hey, I got this from Gavin for $14.99. What are you selling it for, asshole?" Yeah, exactly. You can see how frustrating that would be. Anyway, Saturday. Um, we kicked off at 10 in the vendor's room. So sales kickoff. Again, I have very shortly after sales kickoff, I have a panel. So, oh yeah, that was funny. So this was the editing and publishing anthologies panel, which was very convenient for the editor and publisher of Strange New Moons. This was with Shane Hawk, Carol Geisender, Rebecca Rowland, and Candice Nola. And of course, I have published Candice and Rebecca. So Rebecca appears in Strange New Moons. Candice appeared in my last anthology, The Perfectly Fine Neighborhood. So the funny thing was, I rush out. I'm like, trying to get all the sales I can. So I rush out at like 10:40, pounding the pavement to get to this panel. And I get there right at 10:45, and I'm like, all right, when is this asshole gonna kick things off? And it's like 10:47, and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, who's the moderator? And they all look at me, and they're like, well, you are, Steven. And I'm like, of course I am. Hi, everybody. My name's Steven Kosniewski, and I'd like to welcome you all to Editing and Publishing Anthologies. So that one was uh, much, more robust. The whole panel showed up. Everybody had a lot to say. It's not that per se. So, like I said, I feel like blending genres. I moderated it wrong. Uh, so it was a little more like pulling teeth. With this one, it was a lot more like I could sit back and be like, okay, I'll ask one question and that'll take up 15 minutes. And then I just have 15 minutes to come up with the next question. So that was actually a very nice panel. A lot of people had questions about editing anthologies. This is one of the things I really like about events like Scares That Care is you can, kind of share your hard-won wisdom with people. I mean, the formal panels and readings and stuff are great, but then also, like at BarCon and, just with anybody who asks you, or like Bill was saying, hey, how do I best, support the press, blah, blah, blah. So folks will just ask you stuff like that. Um, so yeah, that was at 10:45, and then went back to the vendor's room for a little while, had some more sales, hung out with some more people, and then came my big reading. So at 12:30 was my reading with Bitter Corella. And, I have to thank the organizers. Bitter was one of, I don't think he was a guest of honor. Maybe he was. But I don't think he was a guest of honor, but I knew he was going to be one of the bigger draws in terms of a reading. So that was really nice to be, paired with him. Um, so I don't know if I should say this publicly, but fuck it, it's my live stream. So the reading that I was telling you guys about that I wrote the day before, that's been jangling around in my head for about the last 2 months, was an open letter to um, a certain public figure. And I started it off, so my conceit was, hey guys, I've written an open letter to a public figure, and let's see if you can guess who it is by the end, maybe infer from some of the context clues. And the first line of it is, you stupid, stupid, cruel, ugly South African bastard. And then it just goes from there. And Bitter, like, lit up as I'm going on. And I'm just like, just everything that's been in my head for the last 2 months, I'm like laying out. And he's like, so that letter to, and I'm like, we didn't say who. And they're, and the whole audience is like, so you said they were South African, right? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, so Charlize Theron? I'm like, yeah, that's a good guess there. Let's do that. And so for the whole Q&A portion, they kept asking me my real feelings about Charlize Theron. And I'm like, yeah, no, yeah, fuck Charlie, like the whole thing. So I was delighted that that went over so well. And of course delighted. Like I said, I've met Bitter a few times, but I didn't realize he was such a fan of mine prior to the Spirited Giving thing. And then I know he was really enamored of my story, so that's always very gratifying when somebody that you respect so much, like in real life, is giving you props. So that was a very cool event. But then, of course, it's back to the grind. And Saturday's the big day. So Saturday's the day where you go from about 10 to 6, 10 to 5 or 6. So it's the closest thing to like a regular work day for the vendors. Um, so we go till 6, and I'm just exhausted. I didn't get any of that sleep the day before that I had been hoping to get because I wrote the reading, and at least it went over well. So that's good to know. Um, but it's about 6 o'clock, and I think we went to yeah, I think we went to the Italian place. So if you've ever been to Scares That Cares, there's an Italian place called Maurizio's. There's a Mexican place, and there's a Thai place called Emerald Palace or something like that. All like within walking distance. By which I mean like the distance from here to the hotel pool is about the same distance from here to one of these three restaurants. So everybody goes to these restaurants at various points. So let's see who was it? Okay. So Wiley, Wes, Wes's family, Rob Swartwood, Kit Power, and myself go over to the Italian place. And we're sitting down for dinner, and we're finally unwinding a little bit, and talking about the day as it was. And about 30 or 40 other authors, and of course, this is the other thing. Like, we see there's like a couple of tables ahead of us that's like 4 or 5 authors here, 4 or 5 authors there. But then about halfway through our meal, about 30 or 40 authors come in, and we're like, "What's going on?" And we asked some of the organizers, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we had to like rent out the whole back room for all the guests of honor and this and that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess we missed out on that." Um, and then LP Hernandez and a few people. So like some of our people had eat. Oh, and Gavin Dillinger. This that cheap son of a bitch. I'm surprised he could pay for a meal at Maurizio's. We were all sitting there eating, and then Wes's family runs off. Gavin has to run off and do something. So we have a couple seats open up, and LP Hernandez and a few people are like, "Can we sit with you? Because there's no way we're getting back with those 30 people back there." And we're like, "Yeah, yeah, come sit with us, come sit with us." But it's too late. They're not getting served because all the servers are back in the back room, trying to figure that mess out. So I think they ended up having to go to the Thai place, maybe. But it was still cool for the 20 or 30 minutes that they were waiting to get served. And no shade on Mauritius. I understand. I mean, I've never actually worked as a server, but I've worked some jobs like that, and I understand what it's like when you get a unexpected rush that just destroys your plans for the evening. Um, so yeah, 6:30, 7:30, maybe 8. Uh, we're able to head back, and I'm like, okay, gross out contest. Wiley and I are hosting it this year. So this is like the centerpiece of the weekend, right? This is really the big event for Saturday night. This is like the marquee event. Now, I'm starting to get a little bit panicked. And I have done marquee events before. So I've entered every gross out contest that I've ever been at. And I also, a few years ago, we did the Carnival of Chaos, which was the marquee event for Saturday night for Scares That Cares AuthorCon. I think it was the first one. I think it was the one in 22. And that was with Christopher Chiana, John Wayne Caminale, Wes Southard, Wiley Young, Jeff Strand, and myself. So that was a marquee event that I have hosted before. But I've never quite done this. And I was getting real nervous. And I'm still, like, last minute, like, it's 8 p.m. and the thing goes off in 2 hours. I'm like, I don't have anything prepared for the judges or anything. I'm like, despite all of my efforts of putting everything together, I'm like, I don't think I have all my paperwork in order. And Kit looks at me and he's like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm really nervous about this event. And he's like, why? He's like, why? Have you never done a gig this size before? And I'm like, I don't know. And I kind of talked it through with him, and he kind of talked me down from the ledge. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I guess what I think is going to make me feel better is to get a little more prep work done. So again, that 2 hours when I could have been sleeping, I'm like, let's do some more prep work. Let's make sure the judges have all the information, and we'll give them charts and glossy 8x10s and everything. Um, so I do all this stuff up, and oh, God bless the hotel staff at the Williamsburg, the DoubleTree by Hilton in Williamsburg, uh, because I went to them at like 8 p.m. on Saturday night and was like, "Can you print out a bunch of stuff for me?" And they're like, "Yeah, no problem, sir. We'll take care of that for you right away." And then I realized we didn't have our awards together. It turns out the auditorium was locked, so I'm like, "Okay, good thing I didn't nap until 9:45, because there was still a bunch of moving pieces with this to get ready." But in any case, I go down there, and Judith Sonnet, who's one of our judges, is like, "What can I do to help?" And I'm like, "Judith, uh, the doors are locked. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, anything you can do to help?" And she's like, "Yeah, absolutely. I got it." She's like, "Let me take care of the judges. Let me get these doors unlocked for you." So it's perfect. And then we go in. And Kit's like, hey man, you're kind of nervous. What can I do to help? And I'm like, I don't know. Normally there's a bouncer. We don't really need a bouncer. I don't think. But can you just like, we'll call you our bouncer, and if I need you for anything, like you can come help us. He's like, yeah, absolutely, man. Whatever you need. So we go there, and I'm like, okay, I've put all this time of prep work into this. I've done this event many times before as a contestant. I've never hosted it, but let's see how it goes. And then there's this thing that actors and that kind of thing talk about, where, of course, I'm going to forget the term, but it's like stage health or something like that, or like stage firmness, where it's just like maybe you're nervous, maybe you're whatever, but as soon as like the spotlight turns on, like you're just there, like you're in the moment and you're feeling the energy of the audience and everything. And like I've experienced that before, doing live performances, and it really happened for me on Saturday night. So it was just like, I'm all walking around, I'm pacing back and forth. I'm like, did I prep this enough? Did Wiley prep this enough? Are we all ready to go? And Judith's in back, like taking the judges in hand and telling them how this is going to go. And like I'm watching my watch, and it's like 9:59. It like turns 10. I'm like, okay, I'm on. And then I'm on, and I'm like stage Kazanowski, and everything's just like the jokes are coming, the bon mots are coming, everything's great. So we do our first gross out contest, and the thing that I didn't tell anybody. So what happens at gross out stays at gross out for the most part. I will tell you the results because I'm very happy about them, and I think that's worthy of being public knowledge. So we asked the judges to give us first, second, and third, and a booby prize, and I also asked the judges to give us the dead last contestant this year, which is not something you normally do, but there was something very special that I had in mind. So the booby prize went to Lucas Milliron. And what that is, I think we call it the judge's choice or something in the beginning, but it's the booby prize. It's whatever, ugliest shoes or worst delivery or whatever the judges come up with. I think I won at KillerCon last year for best use of Lucas Mangum as a prop. So it's things like that, ridiculous things. Um, and then third place was Shane McKenzie. Second place was Megan Stockton. And then first place was RJ Benetti. And RJ was very sweet all weekend. If you've never met RJ, it's hard to tell when he's on and off. By which I mean when he's playing the character that is RJ Benetti and when he's the real person that's RJ Benetti. But there were a couple of times that weekend when I had caught him and he was off and he was very gracious and very thoughtful. And I was like, oh, wow, RJ, I'm not sure I've ever caught you off before. So, like, it was really, like, gratifying. So the really cool thing about that is RJ has won the Gross Out contest twice before. So this was his three-peat. Now, I've been doing Gross Out contests for 9 years. I've done more than 9, I think, because we started doing the 2 a years and that kind. Well, but there were also a couple of years we didn't do it. I don't know. But I've been doing them since 2016, and I have never witnessed a three-peat. So when you get the three-peat, you are retired. You are like an old hand. You can be a judge again. You can never compete again. And the idea is so that, like, The Sopranos doesn't just keep winning the Emmys or whatever, which is a problem of real awards, and this, of course, being a utterly meaningless award where the stakes are incredibly low, and thus very, very important to everyone involved. Um, so we retire people after 3 wins. I've never witnessed it before. That night, I witnessed it organically with RJ Benetti. And then you'll notice I mentioned there were 5 awards. The thing I didn't tell anybody until that night, I told Wiley. I didn't blindside my co-host. But the thing I hadn't told anybody was I intended to give a posthumous award to Jay Wilburn. And I mentioned a little while ago the Wilburn Thomas Award, which is for great contributions to the authorial community, because we lost Jay Wilburn a few years ago, and his contributions to me personally and to the community at large were very, very significant. Jay was a two-time winner. And since he passed away, I have been trying desperately to win a gross out contest for him. I'm sorry, I've been trying desperately to win a gross out contest so that I could ask to just share it posthumously with him. I never did. I guess I probably never will now. But now that I'm hosting. But now that I am hosting, I was like, well, fuck it. The awards are all, the points don't matter, and the awards are all made up anyway, right? So I said, hey, I don't care what any of you think. I'm awarding this posthumously to Jay Wilburn. He has his three-peat in hell. Uh, and so I asked the judges to give us the dead last entry mathematically. And I was going to jokingly say, um, listen, I called you on stage to accept this posthumous award, but you should take this as a sign you should never come on this stage again. Or some words to that effect. It's mean-spirited, but it's lighthearted, if you guys don't already get what I'm getting at. If you haven't experienced a gross out contest, and you will never be able to experience one online or anything like that, they're not recorded. You're not allowed to share, what happens with them. Uh, but if you haven't already gathered from my descriptions here, that's how they are. So I didn't know who it was going to be, and whether you believe in fate or karma or God or whatever like that, somehow um, the the dead last entrant this year was Thomas R. Clark, and Tommy was another very good friend of Jay's, and I could not have asked for a better person to accept that posthumous award for him. I was like, I thought I was going to be okay getting through it on stage because there would just be some poor schmuck that I was like, you probably don't even know who Jay Wilburn is, but you're taking his award, bro. You, but I'm like, did Tommy throw it? Did he know I was going to award? I'm like, I don't know, but some kind of karma or kismet or something. I'm sitting there and I'm tearing up, and Tommy's tearing up, and I'm like, will you please accept this award posthumously on Jay's behalf? And he was like, I'm delighted to do it. Um, I could not be happier, and gave a very heartfelt speech and everything. Um, and so I had engineered a three-peat, for my friend who passed away. And I got to also witness an organic three-peat. And I've never witnessed one before, but somehow the stars aligned on that night, and we had two on that stage that night. So it was quite an event. And and I mentioned earlier, Judith Sonnet. I mean, all the judges were amazing. We had Eric LaRocca, Kenzie Phillips, or I'm sorry, Kenzie Jennings. I don't know where that came from. Wait. Uh, Now I feel like an idiot. Yeah, Kenzie Jennings. Why did I say Kenzie Phillips? Okay, Eric LaRocca, Kenzie Jennings, um, LP Hernandez, Judith Sonnet, and Bitter Corella. So the judges were great, um, and Judith really, came in clutch and helped us out with, kind of, I guess you could say, it's like the jury foreman or something like that. Um, and then Kit, I realized about halfway through the event, and they gave us about an hour and a half. I pushed it as long as I humanly could, but still, nerves get frayed, people get hot, people get sweaty. I realized the judges were up there with no water, and I'm like, come here, real quick. Can you check and do you know where the water cooler is? Can you go and get the judges some more water and keep them going? Um, So I was really glad to have him there that evening as well. Anyway, the whole evening went off great. I think it was a really one for the books. So, thanks to everybody that attended, all the audience and contestants and judges, and um, oh, Jason Cavallaro. So the gong that I mentioned that Wiley had gotten, we were discussing this with Jason Cavallaro, who I gather is I probably shouldn't use the word professional, but very high-end amateur percussionist. I think he's a trained percussionist. Was like, oh, you can't just hit a gong. You have to play a gong. And we're like, would you play our gong, Jason? And he was like, I'd be delighted to. So we actually had more staff on stage than we were initially anticipating. Um, so the whole thing went great, and then we Saturday night's the big night, so we all retired to the lobby for the evening. Started pulling out the drinks. Now, I have joked with Kit before. Um, when I went to British Fantasy Con, I was like, "So, Kit, I hear that you Brits can't keep up with us Americans when it comes to drinking." And he's like, "Oh, you've heard that, have you?" So when we were at FCon, I think we saw the sunrise. I think we were up till about 5 drinking before we finally both just ran out of alcohol, and we're like, well, I guess we have to call it quits. But I mean, when it's a matter of national pride like that, like you have to keep going. Of course, the scares, we did even more than that. We more than shut down the event Saturday night. There was no one left. We were still up. And then the con organizers were getting up for the next morning and coming and wandering out to have their coffee. And we were like, well, we'd better tell you guys the lay of the land from last night. So we were sitting down still drinking our scotch and so forth while some of the con organizers were having their morning coffee. So that was very, it was very good to know that at least one member, one British citizen or subject rather, can hang. So good on you, Kit. Good on you for bringing great pride to your islands there. Um, so from that point, we had about 2 or 3 hours to sleep before it was time to open up the vendor's room again. So Sunday. Oh, yes. And actually, I had a panel almost immediately. I don't think I made it to that panel. No, I must have. Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, I did make it to that panel. Wow. Yeah, so I had a 10:15 panel, which was splat stick instead of slapstick. So it was about humor in horror. And yeah, so Wiley and I ran off to that panel almost immediately, and that was with James Sabata. So that was the first one I didn't actually have to moderate. I knew I had to moderate the first one. I forgot I had to moderate the second one, and then the third one I actually didn't have to moderate. So that was probably why I was okay going into that a little bit hungover. But yeah, James Sabata, who runs the Spirited Giving that I was talking about on Thursday night, was the moderator. And then Bitter Corella was there. DM Guay, who I mentioned earlier, was also a Spirited Giving contributor. Vicky Parhampton and Nathan D. Ludwig, also, good friend. Um, so yeah, that was pretty cool. And I seem to recall, yeah, that's right. We talked about some of our favorite humorous movies, how humor works, how you make it blend with horror and that sort of thing. So that went over really well. And thank God I didn't have to moderate it, but James did a great job. Um, and then, so Vendor's Room closes a little bit early. I think it closed at 3. And Kit's flight was not until Monday, so we went ahead and stayed until 3. Um, and like I said, Friday was probably the most trafficked day in the vendor's room. Saturday was all right. Sunday was kind of dead, but sometimes that happens, you know. Um, and then did we finally sleep? I don't think we did. No, I don't think we did. Um, so I ended up. That's right. I had a business meeting. So actually, very well. Hopefully, fingers crossed, a very successful business meeting. Um, so I think we. Oh, I know what we did. We went to the Mexican place. So Kit and Wiley and I went over to the Mexican place I talked about, um, next to Maurizio's and Emerald Palace, um, for lunch. And then I had a business meeting at, I don't know, 4 or 5, which I think went very well. I don't think I should probably talk too much about that. I don't think I like to talk about. I mean, I'm happy to do marketing, that sort of thing, but I don't think I should talk about, the inner mechanics of my business. Um, but yeah, that was actually really cool. That meeting alone probably made it worthwhile to go to the event, even if not for all of the camaraderie and sales and everything else. Um, I'm sort of bursting to tell you guys about it, but I just should. So I'll choose the better part of valor here for this moment. Um, and so the thing that people don't know about Scares of Care in particular is, I mean, well, first of all, the authors and everybody are all very, welcoming. There's no cliques there. I think that may have been one of the things that they didn't like about the old flagship scares, was how certain actors kind of formed a clique, and then certain other actors kind of formed a clique and didn't come out of their rooms, and then this and that. It's very much like, whether you're a fan, whether you're a newbie, whether you're an old hand, whether you're kind of a legend or whatever, people just all hang out together. And that's all well and good, but on Friday and Saturday, it's so hectic, you don't know what's going on. On Sunday night, it's like whoever's left is you're all hanging out. So that sense of like, oh, it's the Sunday night, it's the Dead Dog crew, we're who's left, thing really starts to come to the fore. So Sunday night, we're hanging out with some great people. So many people, Craig Brownlee and Joseph Pesavento, and all the great people. I could just spend the rest of this live stream rattling it off, but I'm already at almost an hour and a half, so that seems like a good place to end it. Um, Another great one in the books. I think Kit and I probably closed out the bar again on Sunday night, but we had to get a good solid, 6, 7 hours of sleep, and we had to be out by 11. So, and oh, God bless. I mentioned before about the guys that helped me with the printing, at the hotel lobby. Um, I went up to them afterwards to say, hey, thank you so much for helping me out, with the printing for the gross out contest. Also, when is checkout? And they're like, well, it's at 11, sir, but would you like a later? And I'm like, no, no, no. I cannot handle any later. We've got flights to get to and that sort of thing. But thank you for offering. Like, really kind. Do you know how many hotels I've been to that have been like, sir, you tried to check out 5 minutes late. We're going to charge you for an extra day. You know, they're not like that at all. They're very, very, very cool down there. If you haven't experienced it, it's like they all really get into the whole thing. It's absolutely worth it if you've never been. So yeah, then took Wiley to the Richmond airport, and then dropped Kid off at Baltimore, and so actually got a good 3, 4 more hours to hang out with my friends, which normally I kind of drive up and back alone. So I've never really. I don't think I've ever had that experience before. Not at this con. I think I've always driven alone. So that was really cool to kind of get another 3, 4 hours of the con, or the con camaraderie, at least going. So I think that's about it. I think I answered all the questions in the chat. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you next time.